Have you become accustomed to 3 out of 5 commercials advertising some drug that you need to ask your doctor for? And the 4th commercial advertising an attorney you need to call for the side effects that that drug has caused? Do you enjoy your Loratab while sitting at home wishing that somebody would clean up the streets from all the marijuana that's going on? Or do you enjoy your marijuana while you're wishing you could do it more freely and exercise some sort of right to have it? Those are things we're talking about today. This is It's the Law, Weekend Edition, and I'm attorney James W. Davis. Fernando, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. Speak up, please, because we can't hardly hear you.
Okay.
Crystal, how are you doing?
Doing good. Glad
Good.
it's Friday.
All right, Fernando, tell us what's going on in Spain. You're our little international expert here. How does Spain treat the use of marijuana?
Well, the use of marijuana in Spain is not legal, but it's decriminalized. What means you can pretty much carry some marijuana with you in the streets, and you won't barely ever get to jail just by having possession of marijuana.
Okay, and you spent a little time in Amsterdam and other places have you done your travels in different places?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you know about the laws in those areas?
Well, Amsterdam, for example, everybody thinks it's the freedom country for marijuana, and it's really not. I mean, you can smoke marijuana in those coffee shops, but the laws that you have to carry that marijuana out of the coffee shops are really, really restrictive.
Okay. And I'll ask you to look a little bit about what's going on in the United States. We've got a lot going on with Colorado and Washington having some legalization, actually, of marijuana since the last elections have taken place. Yeah. And we've also had California, everybody knows about, for medical purposes. It's been decriminalized for quite some time. What have you found out about that?
Well, I was really surprised that I thought it was maybe a couple of states using medical marijuana, and it's actually 18 states plus Washington, D.C., the ones that have legal medical
18
marijuana.
states.
Yeah.
But when you say legal marijuana use, some of those are by prescription that are actually
Yeah.
in some sort of drugs that are related to cancer treatment or different things like
Yeah.
that. And give us a quick list about what those states might be.
Okay, the states are Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and Washington, D.C.
Okay. And Crystal, what do you think about the medical use and the different uses of different states with the marijuana?
Well, from what I've heard, I think the hardest part people are having is proving there's actually a real illness, that's valid or, really requires the medical marijuana, if you will. So I think that's where the issue would come in. How can you really prove? It's like diagnosing pain. It's nearly impossible.
Okay. And Fernando, when you were over here, exchange student-wise, you were over at Southeast when that school still existed. What did you see in the school systems with marijuana? Did you see it in the school systems at that time?
Well, I did see a lot of policies against drugs, and I think that on a way make them more attractive to kids, probably. In Spain, they don't, they give you some lessons of how bad a drug can be for your system, but they don't have this kind of fight against the drugs.
And what did you see, though? Did you see people with marijuana while you were going to school, or was it sort of invisible as you were there?
I actually was sort of invisible while I was there, at least in the school.
Okay. When I was growing up, I was at Southwest High School, and at Southwest, we had a hill. And at the hill, you knew you go to the hill, and that's where people were hanging out and smoking weed and that type of stuff. So you either were over at the hill doing it, or you were somebody who either didn't use it or didn't use it at school. But there did seem to be some set place. Crystal, you went to a Christian school, and did you have the presence of it there with people that you knew at school?
I may have been a little naive, but not that I was aware of. I'm sure there were kids doing it. A lot of times in private Christian schools, those are the kids that are rejected from other schools, so sometimes they'll bring the trouble in or the bad in, and kind of pollute the good kids that are over there. So
I went to a Christian school during the 10th grade for a few weeks, and that's what I saw there. There was a lot of people that were sent over to the Christian school, somebody trying to fix them up a little bit, and you had a worse situation over there than we actually did at Southwest. So for a minute, let's talk about the difference. Do you guys understand the difference between why the state has these different laws here, and each state might be a little bit different in what their treatment of marijuana is, and yet there's a federal government that's got their own laws? Do you understand how that works, Crystal?
Well, from what I understand, there's a separation, right, between what federal government can do as a whole and what states can do on their own just to dictate what goes on in their states, so I understand that those can be two really different things.
Right. There's still federal laws, and the federal laws are applying to all of the United States. Mm-hmm. And those laws are in effect regardless of what's going on with the states themselves. States can legalize it, marijuana can legalize it, and the federal government, if they choose to act on it, actually could come in with the stuff that's being done legally in these states and make some sort of action against them, put federal charges against them. However, right now they're not choosing to do so. And it does appear that President Obama is sort of in favor of legalization of marijuana, and I think the way a lot of people don't understand how the government works, but the president's office is the executive branch. Those are the ones to carry out federal law, whether it's immigration, whether it's these drug laws. They decide what they prosecute and what they don't prosecute. You might be familiar, we've talked on a different show about immigration and how they're choosing to give somebody, some rights that are here illegally, even though there's no law that allows them to do so. And that's because they're the ones that are enforcing the laws. So they choose whether or not to enforce it. And at this time, they're not choosing to enforce it. And actually the Bush administration, so two separate parties have taken very similar stances as far as whether or not they're going to be very heavy on enforcing these laws against the states. So right now it seems that both parties might actually be in the same area with that. Fernando, you did a little bit of research on to what the parties are doing. What have you found out about the federal laws?
Well, I found out that there is at least two people working on the government on the federal laws that are trying to legalize marijuana on a federal level.
And are these the two? You said earlier that there was two Republicans that were doing
two
that. So
Republicans,
these are two Republicans. Yeah. Are they? It actually seems to be a Democratic issue, a Democratic Party issue, where they seem to be more in lines of the legalization. But you found two.
That's what I actually thought. I thought it was more a Democratic policy than it's a Republican policy.
So a lot of people are confused about that, about who actually it is that's moving these movements. But you also had, do you have that handy about the federal government has classified it as a Schedule 1 drug?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand it because at least for what I know from Europe, marijuana is in a different level than would be...
well, on the schedule that you had earlier today, you were telling me what the meaning of that was, about no medical use. Do you have that available?
Well, what I have is that it's a Schedule 1, and what it says is that you cannot use it as a medical use or any other use, because it has a high potential of abuse, because the drug has not currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States, and because there is a lack of accepted safety for the use of the drug under medical supervision.
Okay, so part of what Schedule 1 is going to mean is that there's no medicinal purpose for the drug. That's what they decided, and that's how they've classified that. Now, we've got many states that disagree with that, so there's going to be some controversy in time. Although it's considered a lower level drug by many people, it's still at the top of the schedule list on the drugs. We'll be back in a few minutes to talk about different uses of drugs, why people use them, and that's in 30 seconds. It's easy to make the mistake of driving after you've had too much to drink. The consequences for this error can be devastating. You may lose your license even before you've gone to court if you do not take action within 10 days of your arrest. Your privilege to drive, insurance rates, and court costs can all be very expensive. I'm attorney James W. Davis. DUI crosses a large section of society. However, don't take it lightly. Contact my office and let us help you put it all in perspective. I'm attorney Jay Davis, and we're back talking about marijuana and other drugs and what you do and to know your rights with the drugs. Let's talk for a minute about why people use drugs. It seems like everybody's on something. We had years that we were going where we were putting every kid that acted up a little bit in school on some Ritalin. It seems like the pharmaceuticals are very much into making sure everybody's on something. What do you know about that, Crystal?
Well, from my pharmacy experience, it seems like a lot of times people keep taking additional things to cover up the side effects of the first drug they were prescribed, And
you worked in the pharmacy for a while. How long did you work in the pharmacy?
I mean, on and off for a good 10 years, I would say, but just seeing what came in and out of there, it was really crazy at times, just because I could see the addiction really taking a hold of people's lives, and it was like you want to throw them a lifeboat or a raft or something, to help them get off this train. But
and it seems like as a society we've said, ask your doctor, get a drug, and we have drugs that are advertised, like I said in the introduction, drugs that are advertised and just said, go ask your doctor, not something that you went to for an illness for, but go ask your doctor about this drug. Go get some Ambien so you can sleep a little better. Go get some whatever. And it seems like it's a never-ending cycle, like you think. What do you think about pharmaceutical companies and the medical establishment as?
I mean, I think it's just another business like anything else. They're going to push their agenda as much as they can on the public, and if we're sitting there taking the handouts, of course, we're going to be a society filled with drugs, and it's not necessarily always a good thing, you know.
And Fernando, your dad's a doctor. What can you tell us about drugs other than marijuana and how they may relate?
Well, the thing is,
Be a little louder.
the thing is, in Spain, it's a little different because we have the social security. So, really, pharmaceutical companies cannot make as much business as they can do here in the States. So, the prescribed drugs that they can give you in Spain, I think it's more trustful than what they can give you here in the States, because here is just a big business.
Okay. Well, one thing about the way, and that is similar to what the United States is trying to go to with what we're referring to as Obamacare to try to get it. But the way the United States does their government-controlled drugs, I believe, is very different than what other countries have done. Other countries seem to be, like you're saying, Spain is more conservative on what they're going to allow. What the government has typically done with drugs is to dole them out as fast as you can. They have they have almost no control on how fast they're going out. If a doctor prescribes drugs to somebody who's on a government assisted plan, they almost do it without any kind of penalty for overprescribing or anything like that. And that's a problem we have in our projects and in our poor neighborhoods, is that a lot of these people are on some sort of government plan, and they can make more money by asking for a prescription and selling it in the street than they can by just sitting and waiting on their check to come in. So people are augmenting their income, which generally is not enough to live, and doing these things. Have you seen any kind of that sort of thing going on in Spain?
Well, not in Spain, really. In Spain, it's sort of easy to find a drug. If it's a legal drug that you can buy in a pharmacy, sort of easy to get the way to get it, to buy it. But people is really not attracted to those kind of drugs. If they want to do an illegal drug, they will do the most common illegal drugs like coke or ecstasies or marijuana or whatever.
So you don't see the prescription types of drugs being as abused in Spain?
No, not at all.
And what do you attribute that to? What do you think is the difference in Spain there?
Well, I think probably we related more to medicine, not just the drug. Like prescription medicines, probably we related to something that heals you, not something that you will have fun with it.
Okay, a part of people abusing all of these drugs, the ones that are prescriptions and the ones that are illegal by nature, is a desire, I guess, just to change their thought pattern. Why do you think so many people are trying to change their thought pattern, Crystal?
Well, I think it starts out as a temporary high, you know, and then as time progresses, there's more of a dependency. And sometimes I feel like people get involved and get way too far gone before they can really get the reins back in on that, you know, and regain control of their lives, because it's become more of a dependency than initially was thought out to be. You know, I think a lot of people get injured and they go into it thinking, I'll just be on this temporarily, and then it just snowballs.
That seems to be true. A lot of people are injured and they go and they get some pain medicine, and then the pain medicine gets a little bit stronger. It stops working. By nature, they have less effect over time, and if the pain is not addressed, then they continue to go stronger and stronger. And alcohol is also a drug. It's legal, at least at this point in our country's history. Alcohol is legal, and people sometimes use that for the same reason. So how do you compare that, Fernando?
Well, I think people just want to have fun, either with alcohol or any kind of drugs. They want to not thinking what they're thinking all the day. They want to break, probably. That's what I think they look for.
Okay. And why do you think people will need a break?
Well, probably you got too much going on. Most of the people got too much going on in your lives. You got money issues. You got 8 hours a day working, 5 days a week at least. You got too much going on probably, and people just want to break through and just relax for a while.
And I actually see something sort of the opposite of that. I see that people are trying to do some escape and they've got money issues and that, but it actually seems that there's more drug abuse in people who aren't working their 8 hours a day. People who are given a check by the government that generally is not enough to live, so they still have to worry about money. A lot of them are trying to make money by doing some of these illegal sales, like I was just mentioning, for legal drugs where they're getting prescriptions. Other ones are choosing to do it by marijuana and then just illegal drugs. And they can augment this government salary. We're sort of subsidizing them by the government paying this money and then subsidizing their illegal activities. That's what I see when I sort of go from place to place and see what's going on. And even, you know, sometimes with clients coming in, they're often victim of this government scenario that's been built up. What do you think, Crystal?
I mean, I think you're right in some of that, you know, that the government is a little bit to blame for our society being in this need for rehab, you know, and really need to take a step back and look at what's going on. But I also think it's the people, you know, I feel like in our society we're always going to have a group of people that are feeding off of the government, you know, and pulling from that whole cycle, you know, and that whole era of, I don't know what you would want to call it, I guess, just a dependency really, and thinking everybody should provide for them when they don't want to do any work for themselves, you know. And it's not necessarily a race or a gender thing, you know, it's just an issue across the board.
What's
with all
odd
of
to
us.
me, though, is a lot of these people are willing to work for themselves. They're willing to go out and what they call slinging some dope or whatever they're going to do. They're willing to do that. But what I see is the government often pays them not to work, which sort of keeps them out of a job market and forces them onto something else. So we're sort of creating a society where they benefit from this activity if they choose to do something. If they choose to do something, they tend to do a little bit of work in some illegal activity, whether it's to go out and steal from somebody. But a lot of it comes from sort of being conditioned to not work at all. But we've got a lot to fix in the society if we're going to fix it. One thing that I've also noticed about what people are doing these days is that it seems like they're going to drugs for one purpose, and that is just to escape. That they're not happy with what life is, and they're going to escape. But we'll talk more about that in 30 seconds. There's never been a time when more people were struggling with debt. If you find yourself under pressure with potential foreclosure, repossession of your car, or phone calls from creditors that you just can't pay, then you need to know your rights. I'm attorney James W. Davis. We can assess your situation and help you decide whether a bankruptcy or other debt relief may be your answer. Debt relief consultations are free. Come see us and know your rights.
James W. Davis and Associates, attorneys at law.
I'm attorney Jay Davis, and this is It's the Law Weekend Edition, where we're talking about drugs and what your rights are and what they are not. At the end of the last segment, we were talking about why people are doing drugs and what's causing them to do it, and whether or not they're doing it to escape. Fernando, you had said that that a lot of times people are doing it just to have fun, but it seems like a lot of people who really get into the addiction element are in some sort of life that they're not real happy about, and it gets progressively eased by getting into a drug state. And as they do that, it takes more and more and more until they're out of control. Crystal, in the pharmacies, did you see patterns of that as people came in and out of the pharmacy getting drugs?
I mean, I think so. I don't know if that can be generational to be passed down, that type of addictive tendency, you know, but I certainly think there's a trigger in your brain, you know, that causes that. You know, I don't think it's necessarily all because they're depressed or unhappy about the state of affairs in their lives, you know. I mean, there's people from all walks of life who the addiction grabs
And it
them.
does seem to be going further and further in the different walks of life. And now, with the drug laws as they are now, we've got marijuana and the obviously illegal drugs, but we've got so many people on drugs that people don't realize where they might be. I've talked to a potential client before, actually in a different city, not in this area, but where was stopped for being at a place where she thought a yard sale was going on and saw some things that looked like a yard sale that had been abandoned, and it was actually an abandoned house with some of the stuff taken out, and got stopped, being questioned about that. And as they did that, they found some legal drugs in her possession. And she found herself suddenly, at least with a non-prescription or a lack of prescription, so an unmarked drug, which is a misdemeanor by itself. And if she can't produce the prescription, then she finds herself. And this is actually Peachtree City is where this was, and there's very affluent people there, and this is happening across just a large section of society. So as these laws get more strict and as we get more and more people on them, we're going to have more and more people in the jail system. Right now, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the jail system's pretty crowded. Have you guys been hearing about that?
Yes.
What do you think about that, Fernando? You guys have a jail crowding problem in Spain?
Well, not really. Most of the crimes that you go to jail here in Spain is just an administrative fault, what we call administrative fault, and it's usually held on by paying some kind of fine, and that's it. I mean, it's really, really hard to go for a drug issue to jail. You have to be really selling drugs, not being something for personal use.
Well, Georgia's latest law, where they've actually changed, and we had some information about this recently, And that is that they're getting more and more programs to avoid, at least on the first offense, where somebody may not have to have the jail time, they may not have to have a conviction on their record. There are defenses that are actually relatively new now to some drug charges, and many of those are part of a drug program where you go through a drug program, and if you successfully complete that drug program, then you're allowed to not have that conviction, or the conviction is withheld. I've had a lot of people who are Spanish speakers who are here on an immigration status, and they believe that they're protected under this. They go to attorneys that don't know immigration law at the same time, and they believe that this conviction is going to save them. It doesn't work for certain other aspects, because in immigration, if you have pled to it, you've acknowledged the elements of the crime, and that makes you deportable. However, with other people, with United States citizens, that can be a very good defense, and that's true not only with marijuana but with other drugs as well. We do have this overcrowding problem. I don't know if you guys remember Major Jackson came and spoke one time at an Optimist Club meeting, and we listened to her talk about the different things that were going on in jail. But we have an education problem there, and I'd like to go back for a minute to our school systems and what we're doing with our kids, because this other law that's just come into effect also has higher penalties for incorporating children or somebody under 18 in the use or distribution of marijuana. How is marijuana generally distributed in Spain?
Well, in Spain, most of the people, I mean, not most of the people, but a lot of people grow marijuana. It's legal to grow marijuana in your house, and it's legal to smoke it in your house. So whatever you do indoors, it stays indoors. So it's really not hard, and as long as you don't have big quantities with you in the street, it's really not a big deal.
Okay. And Crystal, what do you think about the way that kids are getting involved in these things? Have you seen that or heard of that, or what are you familiar with?
Well, I think that, a lot of children these days are a product of their society, and they've got parents that are strung out on drugs, and inevitably that's going to be passed down to the kids too,
They say that what a parent tolerates in moderation, children will tolerate in excess. So generally, if a parent is okay with a few drinks here and there, it's more likely that a child will be okay with a few 12-packs here and there. So a lot of times with drugs, it's the same way. And once you sort of tolerate the illegal drugs, the next level, which sometimes can be very high. We were talking on the break a little bit about meth, and what were you saying about that?
Oh, just that, I don't know if you guys have seen the video, or I don't know if it's on YouTube or not, but it's just the faces of meth, and it shows the progression of people, who are healthy and young and vibrant, and the color is good in their face and their skin and their hair and everything, and then over time, their face is eaten up with the drugs, and their teeth are missing, and they just look, really gaunt and pale and horrible, and it's really taken over their lives, and it's just sad to see.
Yeah, we actually saw that on the jail screen with one of the assistant district attorneys over in Houston County. One of a client that I had, you could look at the picture of the original arrest when they were first sort of getting into some trouble, and then picture by picture of each subsequent arrest, and you could see that a relatively young person became very, very aged over a little bit of time. So it's having some very extreme effects on our society. And some of the drugs, like meth, drugs in general, really the addictions in general, seem to be very, very difficult to get off of. The drug programs, while they seem to be, teaching some good values most of the time, a lot of times can't seem to have much effect to pull them off of that. So the answer, and my belief, the answer is somewhere more spiritual. The answer is finding something that's they're trying to replace a spiritual void, and they're not able to find it. And I believe without that spiritual connection, it's virtually impossible to get off drugs. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Our Constitution guarantees us a presumption of innocence. If you've been accused of a crime, do not believe it. When jurors walk in the courtroom, they want to believe that the person in the defendant's chair is guilty. No one wants to believe that a person can be accused of a crime, arrested by the police, jailed, brought to trial by the district attorney, and sat before a judge and jury if they're innocent. I'm attorney James W. Davis. If you've been accused of a crime, you need an attorney who understands that.
James W. Davis and Associates, attorneys at law.
I'm attorney Jay Davis, and this is It's the Law Weekend Edition, and we're talking about drug use and what your rights and responsibilities are. If this is a war on drugs, which the United States has announced, it's got to be the worst war fought ever by the United States. I mean, we're so much better at any other kind of war I've ever seen. What's going on with this war on drugs? you were talking in there in the break, Crystal, about rehab and things that you've heard about that. What have you heard?
I was just explaining how in some of the rehab facilities, I've seen that a lot of drugs are actually brought in there, which is, I guess, the worst possible thing. You have people who are finally recognizing they have a problem and they're trying to get help, and the last thing they need is somebody really bringing that back into their safe zone, if you will, or, a harbor where they're supposed to be getting better. And
you also have people who are jailed.
Right.
And in the jails, they're finding all of this stuff. They've got more use. They become more addicted while they're in jail. They're incarcerated. We incarcerate them for having some possession or having some relationship to drugs, and then we put them in a place where they're not so much tolerated as just not really actively sought. And that's just in the jails, not to mention in the streets. And likewise, we're looking at the possibility of making controlled guns and being able to control where they're coming from. If we're doing this terrible of a job with controlling marijuana and other illicit drugs, what do you think we're going to do with guns, Fernando?
Well, I think guns and drugs, there's some things that people are just going to do. They're just going to do it. So you might be able to decrease the number of people doing it, but I don't think you're going to just take it away.
Okay, I actually think that with guns, people even more, people who are not the addicted personalities, but people that are just more what we can say patriotic people who don't have any inclination at all for the drug use, still feel very strongly that they don't want to relinquish their protection of themselves and their property and their families to the government. So I think we're looking at going to more of a time where we're looking at the prohibition when alcohol was illegal, and so many people believed that was an invasion of their rights, and it was such a big business just to be in illegal substances. What do you think would happen if there weren't so many illegal attachments to marijuana and there was actually more free flow? Do you think use would go up or down?
I actually think it will probably go down. That's at least what it has happened in several countries, that they have legalized or decriminalized certain drugs. That usually what at least in Europe we call bad drugs consume reduces, and the soft drugs like mushrooms, marijuana, and this kind of drugs, it gets up a little bit for a period of time, but then it comes down again.
Typically that's been the case in other countries that have done that. But that's it for today. I'm attorney James W. Davis, and this is It's the Law Weekend Edition. Remember, nothing in this program is designed to be legal advice. If you have a legal concern, you should consult an attorney. You can contact our office, James W. Davis and Associates, at 478-742-1440. Remember to send your legal question to It's the Law at 41NBC.com. And tune in every Wednesday at 6 here on 41NBC, where we'll answer those questions. Also, check out our firm's website at defendmacon.com. I'm attorney Jay Davis, and when it looks like litigation, you need us on your side.